Awesome. So I'm really glad to have Dr. Chris Wolfe and Dr. Ashley Campbell with me. Let's start somewhere that's fun, a little more light, I guess, before I dive into some other conversations. But how did you two meet? Because you guys are like great chemistry. You guys get along well. You guys dive into research, obviously, and you guys seem like you have a really close treatment style. But yeah, let's kind of start with how you guys linked up first.
Do you remember?
I remember my first memory. Do you remember your first memory? My first memory was actually when I was taking SFMA for the very first time with Mike. And that was way back in the day. You might not have graduated yet from Belmont.
Or just graduated, maybe. Like 2012, maybe.
Because Brandon was there. But you came in the back end and were like assisting some on like the last day, I think, of SFMA. And that's the first time I actually met Mike as well. So that had to be 2009, 2010. Okay.
Yeah, so then I was still in PT school.
I don't know, I'm guessing on the year. It just feels like we've known each other forever.
And then we worked for the same company for a stint. And did I leave first or you left first? I left first.
I think the clinic that you were with was about to leave branch away. But you left first because when I was about to go into, this is how this works, because it goes back so far, but I've been practicing here since 2007 in Nashville, and was with the same company until 2017. And when I handed in my resignation on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, I felt internally the need to let you know. I don't know why, what was inside me. I was like, I should let Ashley Campbell know, so she doesn't hear it through the grapevine, that I'm about to step away and start my own private practice. And I was thinking, it's like, Ashley would have great insight because I knew that you had already done that.
Right.
So that's our timeline.
I do remember continuing ed stuff being like the first time we had some conversations. I remember like eating lunch together at a couple different con ed things. Running related stuff. And I remember Chris being kind of my go-to person locally to talk to about running related injuries and rehab. And then, we had some fairly similar paths as far as like branching away from a large practice here in Nashville and kind of starting our own stuff. And then my path went another way and Chris's path stayed that, but also has some branches to it as well that are also similar with teaching at Belmont. So Chris is now full-time faculty as well as his clinical position, and then I'm adjunct faculty. So we both work with the second years and third year students from a sports and orthopedics standpoint at Belmont. So our paths cross often.
Love it. No, this is perfect because this is really where I want to have most of this conversation today. Is really around how people evolve their actual careers as a PT. And it was something that I planned to do when I was at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh. I was like, I should be a PT. I have this love for training. But then I love partying a little bit more, so I went to business school. So I made a lot more sense.
Maybe that's where I went wrong.
But thinking about it, whenever you're a physical therapist, and the big sexy word I think is cash-based PTs, when it comes out to launching your career there. So I feel like there's a gap though in how that process happens. People, find the corporate route. That's pretty easy to understand. I feel like.
Yeah.
But going into your own private practice, going into the cash-based world, even seems a little bit more, it's a little more foggy.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any insights about how someone can make that transition into getting into that cash-based world? I'd love to hear from both of you guys.
Yeah, I'll start by saying that I think it's a lot harder than people realize. I think it's a lot more common now, and I think a lot of young people are coming out of PT school like that's what they want to do, and they see successful people like Chris and they think like he kind of makes it look easy. And I think, and some people have said that to me before. I don't think I make things like that look easy because I'm like when they say like a duck on water, like I'm kind of smooth along, but like underneath I'm like, and that's how it's felt for years, trying to just keep building and hitting goals and milestones. But I think it's definitely something that is possible. It's just way harder. And I think it's really important to have a good foundation of fundamentals before you start something like that, especially on your own, because mentorship's so important early as a clinician.
Yes, great. No, everything that Ashley said there, because practicing for 16 years, waiting till I was almost 11 years in clinical practice with a great company having the opportunities to work through a large patient population, varying diagnosis, making mistakes, making really good mistakes, and being able to learn through that process for years, having good mentorship, being taught business. Because unfortunately right now, physical therapists, right now at this point, we're still not just taught business, the fundamentals of business, which will make or break someone going into their own business.
Yeah.
Because this goes much more beyond just therapy. And if you don't have the capability of actually being able to multitask business, your therapy, how to advance that, and truly bring a really high level of value to the community that you're trying to serve, it's a lot harder than it looks. And it's just not roses and everything every day. Like you're going to be the first person there, you're going to be the last person to leave, you're going to work on weekends, you're going to work Friday
You'll be the
nights.
janitor and the secretary and the
CEO is the chief everything officer.
Yes.
And you better buckle up and accept that and find passion and joy in that.
Yeah.
Because if not, you aren't going to last.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of value that comes from, I don't like to use doing your time, because that makes people think that they have to be like in another type of setting. It's actually do the amount of time that's needed in order to truly make yourself worth being in a cash-based private practice.
Yeah.
Because what we don't need is people doing a very poor job and giving the profession a bad name.
Yeah.
100%. And I think there's something there though, right? With putting in those actual dues, paying those dues up front is needed to really understand the market. For me, I believe it takes at least 3 years to be active in it. And I think from that cash-based world, it's even more understanding because there's more layers in that cake outside of just doing the actual work every day of taking care of patients. And you mentioned something though, Chris, like when you said something about knowing your audience that you want to serve. You have a clear audience, both of you do.
Yes.
I really define your actual niche very well, I believe. Could you guys speak to that about knowing who you want to serve and how you want to go about doing that?
Yeah, and I think mine has certainly evolved with time, and that's a big piece I think that's important of kind of getting into like a more general setting, weeding out what you certainly don't want to be your niche. That's usually fairly easy and straightforward, and sometimes you even find that some things will surprise you and you like fall into something you didn't even think would be your niche. Like for me, it ended up being golf and baseball, which I like both sports, and I knew I would enjoy treating athletes, but I fell into this like rotational athlete world, and the fact that I specialize in like hip and pelvis, and those particular athletes have a lot of hip and pelvis issues, that all kind of snowballed with the experience I was getting when I was working with a different company and all these things. So, and then learning not only that, like the patient population, but then within that patient population, some people are for you or you're for them, and sometimes you're just not. And I think when you're younger and less experienced, that's hard to wrap your head around. So you get a little, like if you have a situation where someone comes in to get evaluated by you, and they ultimately they don't come back, right? Or they decide they're not going to continue treatments with you, you can get a little hurt by that or a little offended. And sometimes what you have to realize is just that you're not for each other, and someone else is better suited to serve that patient. And that's where having a lot of really great people around you is super helpful. It's like I'll interact with someone on the phone. Like I always like to talk to people on the phone first. And if I can, I get them in for what I think we both term like a discovery visit, like a quick 15, 20 minute one-on-one face-to-face. And very quickly I can tell when it's not the right fit. And someone else I know maybe, and a lot of times that's Chris or someone that works for Chris here in his practice, because he has a couple different specialty areas. And I'll say, hey, I definitely think that therapy can be helpful for you. I don't think it's going to be what I do, but let me connect you with someone who I think is going to be hands down the perfect person for you.
Yeah.
And you're literally, to a young person or someone who's inexperienced in business, you're like, oh my gosh, you're giving away business, right? But that person appreciates the fact that I then connected them with the perfect person. And I've had situations where I've done that before, and then that same person will refer someone to me who they now figured out who is the right person to see Ashley. And they're like, oh, so-and-so told me. I'm like, oh yeah, that was the person I referred to Chris, So it's kind of letting down your, getting rid of your ego, and not getting butthurt about that. everyone is not for everyone.
Yeah, and being okay with that.
Yeah.
And being okay knowing that you have to have your energy and your market in the time and energy that you brand and you market to a specific avatar and a specific person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not cold or callous. It's very much just what you're putting your energy toward. That way you have clear, defined goals of your education, again, branding and marketing and how you set up everything. Because you can't be everything to every person.
Right.
And it's one thing about spending time before you step into a private practice is actually building a large network.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing that we try to pride ourselves on here is that if we aren't the perfect person for you, which we want to figure out within that 15, 20-minute phone call prior to coming in, is we will connect you with somebody who is. So there's value of just having a conversation, because we're not going to blow smoke and make you think that, oh, we're going to be able to help this situation. We have no expertise in that. It's like, no, we actually build a network of other experts, because this needs to be a support system. That's true healthcare and its finest, whether it's nutrition or a physician or a surgeon or another therapist at large, or even another therapist who may be in network and might be better for somebody in a financial situation. Love to connect people with that, because that's going to come back in full fold, like in a good way. And that's actually how the community will continue to thrive and help each other in different settings.
Yeah. So this is going in a place that I really love talking about, because I feel like in business, in almost every industry, it's gone from this place of being the most competitive, where you're trying to compete with the person down the street, or you get this other product, my product's better than your product, or my service is dominated with your service, whatever. To now where it's like a collective, it's a community, I'm just want to find the people that can best serve people I'm trying to serve as well, right? And you guys kind of roll together. So when we think about the early days though, because to have the confidence to say no to people or refer out to somebody else, like the student, they're fresh out, they want to go get into this cash-based world.
Yes.
How do you develop that out the gate, like early days before you have that network? You guys have any thoughts for your younger versions of yourself, how you guys would go about doing that today, if you guys are just getting started?
What's your approach? What would your leaders say?
Well, I think again, it just comes down to like networking and finding good mentors and like putting yourself out there and getting in situations where, the big thing I think that has become less and less commonplace is like volunteering, right? Like for Chris, working with runners, like being at races and various places that he can have exposure to the right, people. It's a time investment that does not have a lot of, at that moment, financial implications for you, but it pays back, it snowballs over time, and it's hard. It's not for everyone, and priorities are a thing, and they change over time. So, Chris is married with 3 children. I'm single, so like certain things that I prioritize at this exact time are going to be different than Chris, and vice versa. And so, I just think you have to take where you're at in your life and figure out what your priorities are, and then find the right avenues.
And what's going to work.
Yeah.
Because we're all in different stages of life, and if you try to think that doesn't matter, it definitely does.
Yeah.
Building this, building a community and giving away a lot for free at the beginning, meaning my time, my effort, weekends, nights, early mornings of helping other people with not the intention of what I can get out of it, because that's seen through. So being at races, being a volunteer without bringing business cards, being there to be a true service, because that was the population I wanted to help and I wanted to learn more from. Finding mentors that were doing what I was doing, and again, asking how I could bring a value and help to them, buying them a meal, buying them coffee, picking their brain, and doing that for years, not just one time, but developing that. And what I typically recommend is that you have the opportunity to learn from somebody, drive farther. If you have the chance to get paid less, then do that to learn. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, but put forth some effort, because there's so many different avenues. And it goes beyond just, oh, I want to do this. There's an art and there's a tact that needs to be seasoned. And that only comes from putting in a lot of effort and time.
I'll also say that like life happens. And so sometimes you just have to pivot. It doesn't mean you have to give up, but for example, like the year at the end of 2014 is when I resigned from my full-time position, like started my cash-based business, and the intent was for that to be like, I was going to be all in on my cash-based business. And then at the start of 2015, my mom was unwell. I was trying to run this business. It was a blessing and a curse. It was a blessing that I didn't have a 40-hour-a-week job that expected me to be there at a certain time, and I could flex my schedule a lot easier to help my family. But at the same time, that business dream got put on the back burner because my priorities shifted very quickly. And a lot, like, we're not going to get into the whole story, but over the course of 2015, like what I thought was going to happen is not at all what happened. And a lot of other doors opened because of that, that led me down some other pathways that have gotten me where I am now, sitting here, 8 years later. But I didn't give up, but I did pivot quite a bit, because my priorities had to change for my family, and that's just the way life is. So sometimes it works out really beautifully, and other times it's a little bit shaky and bumpy. I think most of the time it's a little shaky and bumpy, but it all worked out, I think, the way it should have.
No, I mean, I think that's just real. I mean,
Yeah.
like a lot of people, we all have our ideas about how we see the future.
Sure.
And that's sometimes the quickest way to find yourself not on that path.
Right.
Because you have this path that you think is right, but you haven't been there before.
Right.
And that's why I like when you guys talked about volunteering the most. Like volunteering and being willing to be open to giving up something that you feel is of value to you,
Right.
and that you've been training for, but doing it for free, is a simple shift of, hey, you know what? I get to do this. From I have to go do this. Or this is something that is a burden for me to go do.
Yeah.
And I don't feel valued or compensated well for it. But the opportunity to go serve other people is the mindset that I think all the business owners I look up to and get really excited about kind of interviewing and talking to have. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love that approach. So as we kind of wrap up here, I'm curious then, talk about this whole cash-based future. Like where's this industry going? You guys see this is something that you see more PTs like, all right, adopting, or is it really just not for everybody? And people probably should stay in network. I mean, because I think that both of these paths that you guys have laid out aren't like downhill, easy.
Coasting.
Yeah.
I'll let you start.
Practice, but yeah. What do you guys see moving in the future?
Moving in the future is because it's funny to look back in reflection, just like this has really taken off over the past 7-8 years. That we've moved into the industry that cash base is becoming, I guess, more acceptable. There's less conversations of having to explain that now, but this style settings doesn't still work for everybody. The biggest questions we have are urban settings versus rural settings, right? And I think it goes kind of beyond that, as opposed to trying to make maybe a big enough ripple effect that needs to be noticed by our healthcare system. I think that's the biggest mission and vision that I try to hang on to, is the fact that we're trying to change the face of delivery of our profession of physical therapy. And it's not necessarily has to be a cash base, but that's the best way to approach it right now.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a change in our healthcare system in the delivery of that, the relationship that's built, the fast, speed, and numbers chasing game, where a lot of times it's just the value of what we bring is so diluted. Right now, we're able to slow the pace down, but in order to do that, we have to be in a setting that is out of a network setting. I don't think that's going to be the future forever. I hope not.
Yeah.
But we need to have a big enough splash and ripple effect in order to create some potentially people that are in a manner to help create some change, take a look at it. Then that's what's going to have to happen right now.
Yeah, I think I don't think the future of healthcare lies solely in cash-based practices. That would literally just be impossible if you just think about it. But I do think the pendulum is swinging, and like Chris said, I think as that swings, I do think that kind of people are starting to take notice, and hopefully that pendulum then starts to swing back a little bit, and we find like a happy middle zone where, when appropriate, people are choosing cash-based services, and where maybe not as appropriate or different, and hopefully our payers start to notice what's happening, and maybe they take a look at the reimbursement structure so that you don't have to have a situation where people are seeing 2 and 3 and 4 people in an hour simply to keep the lights on, in an in-network clinic. And unfortunately, that's kind of the world we're living in right now. And the person or people who are suffering are the patients. I mean, the caregivers are getting burnt out, so they're suffering too. But bottom line is, you can't deliver excellent care if you're in a setting where you're juggling that much all at once for the sake of making a little bit more money so that you can pay the bills.
Right.
Not because you want to get rich. This is not a get rich game.
I was thinking
Like,
so if you're doing this to get rich,
you are in the wrong industry.
There's another free.
Yeah.
it's not about that.
Yeah.
But we're seeing more and more people get burned out.
Yes.
And we're seeing we're seeing fewer and fewer experts
Mm-hmm.
in physical therapy because they don't stick it out long enough in the industry to become an expert.
And we're seeing a lot of people choose non-clinical jobs because they're higher paying in sales and other places, and they can work 9 to 5 and they can hang it up. They don't take their work home with them. They aren't stressing over, oh my gosh, how am I going to help so-and-so that can't afford to pay their bills? And it takes away some of the burden, the emotional burden, not even just the time burden. And we can't have, our healthcare system, at least in the therapy world, and I think it goes globally in the healthcare system, is not going to survive in the way it needs to take good care of people if the pendulum doesn't swing back. So hopefully we can be a small piece of that puzzle.
It's got to start somewhere. I don't have the answers to all the questions of how's this go in the future. I don't know, but I hope to be able to help figure it out in a small way.
Well, no. I mean, you two are definitely working on it. You guys are definitely a piece of this equation and people like you, I should say, right? That are trying to find out how they can deliver better care.
Right.
And especially from the physical medicine side, I think there's so many things that aren't addressed in the U.S. from a preventative measures. The physical medicine side, it's like that's the lane, right?
Yeah.
It's a great entry point to start dealing with a lot of things.
Yeah.
So from emotionally as well. So, guys, this has been fun. We got to do more, obviously. Chris, beautiful setup. Thank you for letting us come and crash for the weekend.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ashley, as always,
thanks for being here.
But right before we go, Dr. Chris, you want to kind of plug away if anybody's looking for anybody here in Nashville, and as well, Dr.
Yeah, totally. So, again, we started it 5 years ago, so we're 5 years in. Our practice is building with other experts and clinicians, but we're trying Wolfe Performance Therapy in Nashville right now, single location, but with expert in not just fitness, training, performance, and therapy, and how those actually blend together from a holistic standpoint, from those who need physical therapy, but those who are looking for preventative, but also those looking to perform. And that ranges everything from endurance athletes, those who want to be ultra marathoners, or just working maybe in a high school cross and track. And now we've been able to expand that to field and sport and court, football, baseball, other levels that need that expert in that industry, but know from, can I assess biomechanical problems, and then can I actually help you perform? That's where we're trying to fill that gap. And really, unfortunately, most people get better about 80% in therapy, and we try to fit that gap of that 20%. So take somebody when they're stuck and they can't get that last 20% to 100% or beyond, and that's where we try to plug that hole.
No, I love it, man. So, address, website, give us some good stuff. Yeah.
Wolfept.com is our web address.
With an E.
With an E. With an E. Wolfept.com. And it's pretty easy to punch in for Nashville, and that's the easiest way. You can connect with our social media that way. Easy to connect through our team members, through email and discovery calls directly through our website. We're appointment only, but we love to connect with everybody via email or phone before somebody comes in, so we make sure that we're the best fit for them, the best fit for us. That way it's a continued relationship.
And it's a beautiful layout, man. You guys have you guys have really nice tech too, so you can look at everybody's how sloppy they run. I'm afraid we can go back there. But Dr. Ashley, please tell everybody they can find.
Yeah, so I, depending on the day, the time, so my what I call my full-time job, my real job, is Nashville Hip Institute at TOA, so downtown Nashville in the Midtown St. Thomas building, nashvillehip.org, or you can find me through the TOA.com website. And then my cash-based business is Performance One, based out of Franklin here, so more kind of your golf, rotary sport, athlete. I I don't want to say non-injured, but again, more that 20% gap that Chris was talking about, or more preventative. Generally, again, like people reach out to me one way or the other. I talk to them, have a conversation, figure out where they fit. Sometimes they call me wanting to do a golf assessment, cash pay, and I'm like, sounds like you need physical therapy. You got insurance? You want to use it? And they'll come see me in the clinic first, and then we may transition that to the cash pays. So yeah, NashvilleHip.org or TOA.com, and then my social media is just NashAsh_PT.
NashAsh.
Yeah. If you want to find me there. I will be the first to admit I am not the greatest at being active on social media, but I have every intention of getting better, so.
Trust me, there's plenty of other people trying to fill that gap.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, guys, honestly, it was great having both you two here, and I look forward to definitely diving into this for more in the future too.
Come back anytime.
Yes.
We'll
Thanks.
Boom.